Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Let's return to Labour's troubles now. We're joined from Hull by the former Deputy Leader of the Labour Party, John Prescott. John Prescott, earlier in this programme, Barry Gardiner, member of the Shadow Cabinet, said that what was needed was an honest broker to resolve this issue between Mr Corbyn and the Parliamentary Party and the party in the country. He named you as a potential honest broker. Are you up for it?
Well, I'm amazed. You know, it twists and turns every 24 hours, and all of a sudden when I turn on your programme, Andrew, yeah, I'm told I'm to be the honest broker. Listen, there's no doubt that I believe and love my party, the Labour Party. I would always do whatever was helpful, but let me say, simply because I had a few negotiating words with Gordon and Tony, it's not an easy proposition. You have to have the will, and the will this time must be, can we avoid the disaster we're heading to of the talk of civil war and separate parties? You can't have that. We must do everything to stop it.
So do I take that that's a no to being honest broker, or a maybe?
You can take nothing from it, basically. Oh. I'm just amazed to hear it. And I'm only John Prescott. Nobody's approached me. Can you do anything? It wouldn't be just one person. It'd have to be a group of people thinking about how you deal with the real problems. The MPs have concerns about selections, which they've been threatened with. There is concern about what our negotiating positions are going to be, and the concern expressed about the leadership. I have to say, when I listen to the programmes again, Neil Kinnock and others, I mean, whether you can go ahead without an election. I'm a believer, and I fought hard for one member, one vote to involve the ordinary members. That's why I persuaded people to vote for Jeremy, let the party make the decision. I didn't vote for him. I didn't think he was the leader that I particularly wanted, but the party did speak. And what has changed now is one member, one vote. The Parliamentary Party has its position. It used to originally elect the leader. We changed that. We went out to the members. And surely, if you want an election, then use the proper procedure, get the names of the MP for the nominations, and have the election, for God's sake. I hope we don't have it. I hope Angela and Owen don't go into election, because that will take the fight much nearer to a kind of civil war.
Let me ask you this, though. If Mr Corbyn is challenged, is it your view that as the incumbent, as the existing leader of the Labour Party, he has a right to be on the ballot paper automatically?
Well, I hear what the lawyers say about that. I haven't read the papers, but what I say this, if you want to challenge the leader of the party, then you get the names of the MPs, you get a nomination list, and you have a vote. That's the way to do it.
I'm simply trying to work out, would it not be fair, since he's the incumbent, shouldn't he therefore, and if he's being challenged, he hasn't stepped down, he hasn't resigned, he's being challenged in the process you're outlining. Whatever the lawyers say, John Prescott, would he not have a right to be on the ballot paper?
Well, I believe if he could get sufficient names from the PLP, which is the rule under our situation, then he has title to be on it. Now, the argument as to whether, because he was the leader before, is really a legal one. Personally, if you're going to have an election, and I hope we don't, if you're going to have an election, that's the only way you can sort it out.
So
but
he would
it will
still
leave
need
a very bitter, divided party.
He would still need to get the names as well, then? He wouldn't have an automatic right?
Oh, yes. If I say that's the rules that we have, you have to get the names. But isn't it funny? Why haven't the names been put up before now? What happened on this occasion was they hoped you could shake him down. They thought he would resign voluntarily. And I think a lot of MPs were convinced that that was the road forward. Well, whether it was right or wrong, it hasn't turned out that way, and the man intends to stand in the election. In my view, follow the processes of the party and get the names of supporters to enter the list.
If he's not challenged and remains as leader of the Labour Party, what gives you hope? What evidence is there that he'll get better at the job?
Well, if you were to take from January, remember I didn't vote for Jeremy for some of these reasons, but Jeremy From when he started to now, he has been improving. But I do accept a lot of people are not convinced. He doesn't have the passion that sometimes you need on I scream and shout, as you know, you, Andrew, from time to time. They want a passion, but they don't doubt he believes in what he's saying. But a leader's got to reach across the party. I don't think Jeremy's done that. Let's face it, there are people in the party who've declared war on him and not joined his cabinet from the first day of his election. Now, what we need to do is he's got to improve. The party's got to recognise the road it's embarked upon, or the PLP, and we need to prevent the civil war. It will be disastrous for us. I sat in the Labour Party when it was the SDP. It put us out for 18 years. Is that what we want again? Is that our answer to our people who are screaming out to tackle his Tory government, that we're getting all constitutional? Follow the Constitution. Have an election if we have to. I prefer we don't have it, quite frankly, and I hope Angela and Owen will not stand. I tried to advise a week ago, could we take a little bit more time to think about it? And I think most MPs and all of us should go away over the holiday, think about it, and come back and remember the party, whole the party, wants us to present a good case against this horrible Tory government, which won't change much under May, and our people will suffer. We can't stand on the side wringing our hands. Get together. That's what the party wants, and that's what I want.
I understand that rallying call, but if there isn't an election, or if there is, but Mr. Corbyn remains as leader, surely the situation is a leader who doesn't have the confidence of 80% of the parliamentary party. That's not sustainable, is it? Something has to give.
I fully understand that, and it's a very proper question. I do tend to feel, though, listening to all the arguments for the last few weeks and in the PLP, and I've been attending them for about 50 years, and listening to those arguments, I wonder if every MP would feel exactly the same if we thought we're embarked upon a new party, the now talk a new PLP party, isolating itself from the membership. If they do that, I wonder whether you'd keep the same vote. People have got to look at their sales, particularly MPs now, and say, let us get behind the guy if that's the case, or get rid of him, but get rid of him the proper way. Most of them thought he would just resign. It hasn't happened that way, so let's think through the consequences and avoid that civil war and deserting our own people in fighting against Tories.
Now, you wrote this morning that the last time Labour split, the Gang of Four, the 1980s, you ended up in opposition for 18 years. It is possible, when you look at the situation at the moment, that split or unsplit, if things continue the way they are, you'll be in opposition for 18 years.
I think that would be a distinct possibility. The real deal, you got to deal with the threats that were made and the misconceptions people had. They assumed, many in the PLP, that this man should go. OK, that's right, they've expressed their opinion about the confidence in him, but they thought he'd just go quietly. That hasn't happened. And if you go on along this road and have another election, we are embarking upon those who are already talking about a separate PLP party, separating it off from the members. God blimey, think twice before you go that road. And we now know there'll be 4 years before the next election. Let's be a bit more common sense and remember it's a whole party, not a bit of it.
All right. And one final question, John Prescott. I'm not wishing to make you more gloomy than you might be. Isn't there the chance that things may get worse before they get better? We've got the Chilcot report coming out on Wednesday, and we're being told that a number of leading Labour people, perhaps even Mr. Corbyn himself, will brand Tony Blair as a war criminal. That can only make things worse rather than better, can't it?
I absolutely agree. Whatever they come out and whether they say they do what they say they're going to do, it will make it worse. That's more the reason why bitter division within the PLP, talking about different parties, can only be made worse by very angry statements about Iraq. We got it wrong on Iraq. Most people now recognise that, and a terrible price was paid for it. Let Chilcot said who made those decisions, and I can't absolve myself from that. I sat in that cabinet. We can have a proper debate, but keep it less personal. Let's debate it and probably learn from the lessons and avoid such a terrible situation, though frankly we have been in other wars since then, which is still that kind of feeling prevailing.
All right, John Prescott, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
John Prescott there. Helen, what's happening?
Well, the one thing I was missing there was really a plan for what happens next. I think it's extremely unlikely that people who've exited the shadow cabinet are going to go back into it. So really you have to at this point say, if you are a Jeremy Corbyn supporter, if you voted for Jeremy Corbyn, what do you want out of this? If you accept that there is really no way. And that's what I think the negotiations are now happening in the party about, could perhaps you have an automatic place on the next ballot, or would you have an agreement that someone, say like Clive Lewis, would get onto the next ballot?
But that would require Jeremy Corbyn to stand down.
Yeah, so I think the calculation really is, the deadlock is that if Corbyn stands again, it looks like he would win again with the members, and there would be such a lot of hatred at the idea of anybody who ran directly against him, that probably would splinter the party.
Chris Bryant was saying that he didn't think it was a shoo-in or necessarily that he would win with the members again.
Well, that's because there's polling out this week that shows that the support for Corbyn has slid backward. And I think the other thing is, actually one of the things that the polls did was put him against all the likely challengers, and he beat all of them. But there was definitely a sense in the vote last time. There were some people who really wanted Jeremy Corbyn, really wanted Jeremy Corbyn's policies. There were some people who just didn't like any of the others and wanted to have a go at something different. And if there were a plausible somebody offering a different option that wasn't Corbyn, they might therefore go for that person.
It was interesting that John Prescott, though, still said that even if you're the incumbent, you need to get the requisite number of MPs.
Controversial. For that in itself is hugely debated at the moment, and will almost certainly end up going to the courts before Labour leadership.
That's all Labour needs now, is the lawyers to get involved.
But I think it's going to inevitably at some stage. For me, this is still a rock and a hard place, and quite frankly, whether it's Clive Lewis or John McDonnell rather than Jeremy Corbyn versus Andrew Eagle or Iveco, whoever it is, these are two tribes now are so far away from each other. The rubber band of any political party has broken. And we are now looking at two political parties eventually. It may take 3 months, it may take 3 years, but I just cannot see how those two wings now can reconcile themselves with the state of the membership as it also is.
But if Tom's right, the key battle then is who takes possession of the Labour brand.
Absolutely.
Because the Labour brand is still very powerful. In some ways, as a brand, it is still more powerful than the Conservative brand. And who has that brand gets almost automatically at least 20% of the votes. That kind of just comes with the name.
It does, but what is the brand anymore? And I suppose that's what goes to the heart of what this debate is about. I think there's a couple of other points. I thought all credit to John Prescott for at least acknowledging that if this goes on, Labour could be out for another 18 years. He acknowledged that. But the other thing is, what about these 40 MPs who are propping up Corbyn at the moment? I don't think enough attention and scrutiny is being given to them and their position, because at the end of the day, if they disappeared, if they hemorrhaged away from Corbyn, then he'd have nobody left. And I can't understand why senior figures, very experienced parliamentarians like Andy Burnham, are still helping him.
Well, except we thought they had tried to resign. And that was clearly the point that Chris Bryant was making. Seven of them, including Andy Burnham, Clive Lewis apparently, tried very hard to resign last week, or tell Jeremy Corbyn they would if he didn't go. But they are now incapable of resigning because he won't see them.
But there's a parallel to kind of Article 50. This is Jeremy Corbyn's own Article 50, right? Which is that as soon as he says he's standing down, he's lost a huge amount of bargaining ability. At the moment, for as long as he sticks it out, he can try and in some sense set the terms of his departure. And I think that's where the conversation might move this week.
But what is the mood on the left of the Labour Party? Is it to stick it out with Jeremy Corbyn, or is it to accept that that's not working and get someone else from a more credible left-wing leader of the Labour Party into place?
My sense is that it's fracturing. It's certainly not the solid way that it was. But I think what you are going to end up with is a rump of people who just want Jeremy Corbyn. They don't care about anything else. It is Corbyn. They joined the party to vote for Corbyn, and they will leave it when he goes. You know, you see people writing those articles. But there is a much bigger group of people who want somebody, say, like of a Lisa Nandy type quality. You know, they want somebody who they feel is authentically left-wing, who has those values, but they're not wedded to it being Corbyn or Corbyn's anointed heir. And that's where I think that is what's beginning to change in the last 2 weeks, is that there has been certain bleeding away of support from Corbyn himself.
But also the extent to which Corbyn is being propped up by 2 or 3 key figures in his inner circle. I mean, I'm increasingly hearing, and I don't know whether you are as well, Helen, that actually the man himself wants to go, but he is being utterly forced to stay there.
Well, there were some
by his
stories
own...
to that effect, but do we know if they're true or
my
not?
understanding is that is absolutely true, because
Or
I
that he
think
wanted to go?
that he feels that he's ready to go, but people around him are saying, look, if you go, then our experiment about this part of the party being in charge will be utterly destroyed. You know, after you, the deluge, basically.
Do you agree with that?
I wonder, to be
Yeah.
honest. I mean, I think
I wonder
if you're the
too.
leader of a political party and you want to go, you go.
Yeah.
And all your mates in the world, your Seamus Mills, your John McDonnells, you say, look, I've had enough of this. I'm being humiliated. I'm out the door. Now, every time Jeremy Corbyn turns up at a rally in Parliament Square where Momentum have got 2,000 or 3,000 people, or Highbury Fields yesterday where there's another 2,000 or 3,000 screaming for him, it makes him feel good and it gives him hope again. It makes him think, well, actually, I know it's looking pretty bad, but there's some still people out there who love me and I've got some hope.
But I think there is also a genuinely principled thing, which is that he feels he was elected by a group of people who didn't have their say otherwise, that weren't represented by the Labour Party as it was, and he feels a sense of responsibility to them to carry on.
And Chilcot coming out on Wednesday morning in this internal Labour dynamic can only make it worse.
Well, absolutely, and of course there is a lot of speculation at Westminster that Jeremy Corbyn is only holding on till then so that he can stand up in the House of Commons and say that Tony Blair should be tried for war crimes. So, you know, possibly that is what he wants. He wants his big moment and he will disappear after that.
Or he may get reinvigorated by it all.
Well, this is the thing I find fascinating, is all the people who are now sort of saying, well, Jeremy Corbyn deserves the loyalty of his MPs. When Tony Blair was the Labour leader, Jeremy Corbyn was the official opposition to Tony Blair within his own party. This is not an unprecedented situation.
I'm not sure Chilcot's going to move the weather too much. I mean, what are we going to learn that we didn't really know that will affect the Labour Party? That Tony Blair got it badly wrong with the rest of his cabinet?
No,
we kind of
but
knew
there are
that.
zealots on both sides who will want to fight this out.
There will, and they'll claim...
Whether we learn anything or not is another matter. It is, I would suggest, fuel on the Labour fire.
But it doesn't change the market. It doesn't move the positions. Everything that we kind of know will be confirmed, and we will be left with where we were. Maybe not on Thursday, but by Friday morning.
But if the leader of the opposition, the Labour opposition, calls on a former Labour Prime Minister to be treated as a war criminal, that's a story in anybody's books.
I do think that is one of the things that is keeping, as Tom said, this Labour Party divide, is whether or not they can reconcile over Tony Blair. Can you accept that he made mistakes, he did things that you like? No, actually, people are in one camp or the other at the moment.
We shall leave it there. Thank you for now. But watch this space.
I've been getting away with it all my